Hi there. We've been playing around with the moving head effect, the new moving head effect in the Zoom room lately, and I thought I would put out a video of just a bunch of random findings that we've been messing around with. Really, just a way to whet your appetite and maybe get you to explore this effect. By no means is this a best practices or a how-to guide. I really don't know all the answers to this effect yet, but I wanted to cover off some of the things that we've been playing with and let you maybe explore putting them in your show and in your sequences. So let's get started here. So um, there's other videos on how to set up these moving heads and these dimmers and such, but we'll cover really quickly and briefly how this is done. By now, with the new version, you should have had a converted moving head a model uh, that would convert your old moving head to the new moving head. The key things here, making sure you have your pan motor channel set correctly and your tilt set correctly, your color and your dimmer and your shutters, etc. Make sure they're all set properly. You should also create what we're finding is this works out best, and I'll explain that as we go through the video. Create these single strand shadow models. So MH dimmers is the shadow model for MH1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, and it's all channel 8. Again, there's a video on how to set that up in the xLights gem, so you can do that. I have a special gobo that I need to set on mine to make a circle, so I have an MH gobo and pan and shutter and tilt. Ideally, we're not going to use the pan and tilt anymore with this moving head effect. They're still here, and there might be still cases where you want to try and use it, but I'm going to try and show you how to do things without using those particular settings. You will also need a group for your moving heads, so put them in order, moving heads 1 through 8, because we'll be using that. And okay, so let's get started here. So go with a sequence. I'm going to create an animation, hit enter. Now, a quick note on your master view. It should be in this order, something very close to this anyway. You want the group at the top, these various single strand effects to be below that, and then moving heads 1 through 8 below that. Make sure that it is in your master view. Sometimes you might have another view just for moving heads, but make sure it's actually in that particular order. And you should be able to know how to do that. Edit display elements, move things around, create your own copy of it, etc. So that should do that. So let's get started. So just some basic stuff that we're trying to figure out how to do to make the head work for mine. I put on an on effect on the shutter so that it opens the shutter. You may have a particular moving head where you have to start or open the shutter prior to even sequencing, and you needed something to warm up, for example. And then for the dimmers, you need something to turn the dimmer on. And you know what? While I'm here, I'm going to create just some timing tracks, hitting the letter T, just to give me some room to play with. Of course, I could use a metronome and create this automatically, but we don't need to be accurate here. So just using the letter T. And I am going to drop in the new effect here, dropping it onto the moving head right there. And there we go. We've got lights showing up because my dimmer is on, my shutter is on, therefore it's on. Make sure it sets to per model default. It's coded to set to that, but sometimes if you move things around, it may come off of that. And if it's not on there, it's probably not going to work. A little tip here that I'll just jump right into it. If you click on one of the moving heads, you can actually expand strand 1. You can see that there's something on the pan. You can see there's something on the tilt. You can see there's something on the shutter. You can see something on the dimmer. So there's a good sign, a good tool, a good way to verify that things are flowing properly. All right, so I'm going to jump back for a second because I want to highlight on the moving heads, there is in the pan, there's some new settings that may be confusing to you. So there's orient to 0, and by default, I think it would probably come in here as a 0 and a 0, right? So you're looking at your display here. When you turn on your moving head, where is it pointed to when you're not sending any data to it or anything like that? In my case, it's pointed backwards. It's pointed back like that on my moving head. Now, this could be based on how you plan on mounting it on your house or on a frame or something, that you want the cables to go a certain direction or something like that. So this value here is where is it when it's at rest, when it's just turned on, no data going to it. This setting here is for pan is what value do you need it to be so that it's pointing straight out to your audience. And I think I had it as 180. And you would want to test that, and I'll show you how to do that in a second with the output to lights. But you're going to want to test that as well. And I'm just going to verify that's what I had. 90 and 180. Yep, that's what I had. So that's for pan, and for tilt, you have something very similar. Again, orient to 0. Where should it be when your um, moving head is just turned on and no data being sent to it? For mine, it sits at a horizontal because it's only a 180 tilt. And then for orient up is where would it be when you are pointing straight up to the sky? In my case, it'd be a 90, and it goes straight up at that point. So I've got that set for all my moving heads, right? So now if I come back to here, I'm on this screen. I want to make sure you choose the fixtures that you want to use. So in this case, all of them. And I can move this to the 0, 0 point. Ideally, if you have it hooked up to your moving heads, you could do output the lights here, and you should verify that your moving heads are straight up and they're not spun around in any particular manner. That verifies that you've got those things working. Okay, so let me just walk through some of the effects now that we've been playing around with. And there we go. I've got a little recipe guide I'm trying to follow here. So one of the things you might want to do is insert a layer below. And if you're not happy with their home resting position, sometimes they'll do what's called like a home position. So when there's no effect, I'm going to delete that guy. So when there's no effect on it all, where would you like the moving head to be? So I did a control shift right arrow, left arrow, and I filled up the entire thing. I'd say all. I want all my heads to always be down and to the right. That is my resting position. So anything, the moving head won't have to move as far to get to any of my effects, and it provides a spot that it'll always be to the right in my case. So that's just an easy home position that you can set. It's not really, I'm using the word home, but it's actually, it's an artificial home if you want to call it that. So you got that. I've done, again, make sure your render styles per model default. And we have alls. Okay, so now let's drop in a new effect. So let's drop in an effect. We'll put it here. So we're going to click on this guy. You have some options here. You can choose anything you want here, but there are some shortcuts. So if I say only the evens will do something here, and I'm going to have only the evens are going to go this way. And all the odds will go this way. And of course, that didn't work. Why didn't that work? Or did it work? And let's into tilt. There we go. Make sure I can see what I'm doing. So the odds are up there, and I'm going to click on the evens, and I'm going to make them go up there. There we go. I'm going to move the model preview out of the way because that really doesn't help us any, and I'll make this bigger so you can see what I've done. So with that one effect, I've got a crisscross effect. I've got the evens going to one direction and the odds going to the other. One thing I didn't mention was this thing here, this selector, that is up top center. This is towards the audience, roughly 45 degrees. This is toward the audience, roughly 90 degrees. This is to the left, depending on how you're looking at it, to the left, 45 and 180. So if I went like this, you're going to get forward 45 degrees and left 45 degrees, roughly speaking. So again, going back here, we have the dimmer turned on. I'm going to take out this wide dimmer, and what you might have for an effect is you just turn on the dimmer just for that effect. You could also do something where you turn the brightness for the on effect here. You could say, I want it to start at 100%, but then fade away as the sequence is running. So let me click on that, and we'll play that through. It's only 5 seconds, so it might not take that much, but you should see it be bright, and then it should go and fade away. There you go. So you can do fade away. So you can do, if you want it to fade right off, you could do this as well. Should play that. It's bright, and then it fades away. Okay. Now, I'm showing you this MH dimmers. This is what we're finding is the easiest to do. We know that there is a dimmer tab here, but we're finding it's much easier. It's more flexible just to create your own MH dimmers and do it here. Maybe things will change, maybe things will improve, but at this point, this is how we're finding sort of the best way to do it for us. We have a pan and tilt, so let's look at that. When I move the dials, I'm obviously just moving the pan and tilt here. If you want to start over, you could do select all, come down here. Oops, sorry, don't come down here. Just go to the status page. I'm going to move this up if it'll let me. There we go. And reset to defaults. You should notice that it says 1 through 8 here. It's got no pan, no tilt, no grouping, no nothing. Everything is turned off, so you're back to a square one again. You can go to position here, and you got pan, you got tilt. You can do anything like that. You could also do it with a value curve. So what I like to do is I go find the tilt. First, we know the tilt is, let's say we're going to do right to that one. I'm going to find out what values look good for pan. So maybe a -45 to a +45. So do a value curve for that. So we know it's -45 to 45. So I could do a ramp and go -45 to 45. And you should see that it pans to the right between those two extremes. Very simple. You've got a very simple back left to the right. All right. If you want to go forward and back, there'd be a ramp up and down. So let's go -45 to 45, and then back to -45. And let's see how that goes. I'm going to assume it's going to the right, and then it's going to swing back to the left. So very simple. I'm going to remove that just so it doesn't confuse you, and I'm going to put that, and I'll show you that you can do the same thing with the tilt. So if we go, let's see, I don't know, 5 to 55, for example. Let's go ramp, and we're going to go 5 to 55. Click OK. And now you're going to get a slow tilt from 5 to 55. And remember, I still have the fading out, so you have that fading out. So it's very simple to create some effects like that. There's a couple of other options down here. And I'm going to first of all reset these. So I'll put that back to 0 and turn off the value curve, reset it to 0. There's these other ones called a fan pan and a fan tilt. So first of all, I'm going to move the tilt down just because it makes it more visible on this video, so you can see them pointing at you a little bit. And if you look at the fan pan and we bump that up, you can see it sort of spreads out. It's like fanning a deck of cards. So you can quickly put any sort of a fan. And similarly, value curve, you can say ramp, and I want to go from no fan up to 15 degrees. And you'll see it'll slowly spread out 0 to 15. Very simple to do that. All right, so I'm going to take that off for now. I'll show you the other feature and put the tilts back here. And I'm going to spin this around a bit if I can. There we go. And I'll show you the fan tilt. So again, just moving it slightly. You can see that it's twisting like a snake. So it's starting off pointing closer to the audience, back, and towards the back of the audience. So you can do that. You can do, I believe, groupings would be, if I slide it over, each one is going to be treated as a pairing. So 4 and 4, as it's done there. I think it might be easier if I show that as a fan pan. I think that might be easier. Let me slide that out. Oops, not so much. And tilt a little forward. And I'm going to spin that around. And there you go. You can see how the groupings work there. They're in groups of 2, groups of 3, which might not make sense. Groups of 4, you can definitely see the 4 working together, and these four are working together. So you got them in four. Five's probably not going to make much sense. Neither is six in this case, and that's all you have. So for this scenario, I think four looks kind of cool. So you can have the left side versus the right side. So you have that. Wanted to touch on something with when you're doing the sequencing, you have to give the head a chance to get into position unless you want the head to show moving as it's going, as the light is on, right? If I was to put this in here and press play, you're probably going to see, well, let's just move this back so there's no movement here. I'm going to put this to let's go, I'm going to make sure I click on all. I think that new feature coming soon is that it'll know not to unselect that. But make sure you have all selected, and I'm going to turn groupings off so we just have one, and I don't want anything fancy. There we go. So let me press play and you'll see what I mean by the heads. We shouldn't have any movement here because they're in these two locked in positions. But if I press play, you should likely see that the heads are going to be swinging around. Yeah, do you see they were swinging around while the light was on. So what you might want to do is put a little small effect just in front of it. So I'll just drag another thing here and we'll make a small one just in front. Notice there's nothing lit underneath of it. So we've got the same values, but nothing in the dimmer underneath of it. So you can do that. And I'm going to render it because sometimes I need to do that. And now we should get a nice, move the head, then turn the light on. So move the head, now turn the light on. Boom. So you're not getting hitting a moving target. What I've, in this case, you might also just move the effect to start the dimmer a little sooner. But if you're doing something like a value curve where you want a particular effect to happen, and be sure and click all again. Maybe you want that fan pan to work in here. So you want this to be ramped from 0 to 15. So you want that to happen with the light on. You don't want to miss half of the panning action by moving the dimmer. So you want to line things up prior to it getting there. This can be a little tricky because you do not know. Let me move this fan pan back to 0. I probably need to set that all again. All, change that to 0. Change that to 0. There we go. You don't know where it's going to start these values. So what I've done, do your best guess and say, okay, I'm going to check it and set that to 0. And why is it? Oh, this guy, 0. What I suggest, what I found works well is if you come down here and expand out the moving heads, and you can see, you can verify that you have the right values. You want these colors to be very similar. Notice how so if I had my pan and they had it wrong, you would see it's, oh, that's not going to match. So that means the head's going to jump when it goes between effects. So even if you don't know the exact values, because maybe you're using a value curve or something, you could just come in there and eyeball and say, oh, that looks pretty good. And that'll get you really close, if not perfect, right on it. So if you have the tilt wrong, you can notice, oh, that's way wrong. I want these colors to match, this shading to match, because that's the value being passed to the head. It's darker, maybe, yeah, right in that range. So this gives you a quick idea to figure out where you want the pre-effect to happen before the actual light effect happens, because maybe you've got some fancy value curves in there and you're never quite sure what values to have them set at. So that gives you that option, just to try to match it up. I mentioned already that the status screen, that's really, it's sort of easy to read. Well, I guess it's not easy to read, but it gives you an idea of what's out there. The things you want to concentrate on is any groupings you have. This is 1 through 8. Maybe it's going to say 2, 4, 6, 8, which means it's your evens, or maybe it says 1, 3, 5, or maybe you've got 1 and 2. I know Alex is working on a couple of updates to help that out in the meantime, but just remember it's there. remember that when you hit the reset to defaults, it's only going to reset whatever you've selected up here. So if I say evens, click here, reset to defaults, it's only going to reset the evens. It's not going to reset the rest of the stuff. It's only going to reset the evens. And you can see the evens are pointing up to the sky because that's the default position. So just remember that. So click on all, and we're going to reset them all. There we go. So now they're all pointing up to the sky. Want to touch on another thing here. I have the on effect for the dimmers. There's a couple of things. You can insert a layer above as well. So this turns on the head, or the light in the head. And you can do a couple of different things here. You might use a color wash as well, and just do a color wash between white and black. That does something similar to the other one. You might also try making a white there and making this one a black. So you're getting a little bit of darkness turning to a bright, then turning to a darkness. So just to gives you a different feel, you can see it's almost like a glowing. It's starting off dark, comes up bright, and goes off. So there's an option there. For people that have or want to use color in their display, you can put an on effect on top and make it red, for example. And it should give you a red moving head. Make sure it says per model default. I don't think it works if you set it to default. No, it doesn't. So you want to be sure and set that to per model default. You'll get red. I'm going to switch it to green. You get green, etc. So you can switch colors. You can also do it. Now, it's probably not practical to do it with a color wheel scenario because it won't know how to handle various shades of the color. But you could get, like if you did red and green color wash, it may look okay here, but the color wheel is going to mess you up. So unless you're going to have to try that out. I don't think it's personally going to work if you try mixing colors there, especially with a color wheel. Similarly, if you have, you can put a bars effect in there, do red, green, blue. It may look okay here as it flips between colors, but if you have a color wheel, you're going to see that dial spinning as it selects each color. Give it a shot if you've got an RGB head and see if that works for you. You can try different colors and options in there. You put that on top of this. Again, this is choosing the color, this one here. This is actually choosing what to light the light there. I think if I move this out of the way, the bars effect may actually keep the light on. Yeah, you can see that it's still on here, but it's full on, all white. Whereas if we did this, you can control the dimmer. If you can look down here, you can see that it's definitely a little bit different. Notice that moving head one is now not a full on the whole time, whereas if you just had that effect at the top, it would be full on the whole time. All right. Again, I'm showing you these options here because I'm not going to touch the control thing and I'm not touching the dimmer. I'm just strictly using the new moving head effect for position, and I'm going to touch on pathing in a moment. So have that. Yeah, so let's move on to pathing. So we've done a lot of things already with with position in terms of what you can do with the value curves and just straight pan and tilt and groupings. We've had limited success using pathing. So I'll give you a quick breakdown of what we've been doing and you see if it works for you. So here we go. Pathing is where do you want the moving heads to move? It's going to follow the path you draw. So let's start off with the basics. I'm going to click once here. I'm going to click another one here, 2, and another one here, 3. And let's leave it at that. So there's 3. So it's going to be downwards to the left, then it's going to move almost to an upright position, and then to the right. So basically something you could have done with the other function, but that seems to work. Just a note, when you have this pathing, if you have something set on the position, it will be like an addition to. So let's say I want to take what that path was, but I want to drop it down an additional 30 degrees. So that works in addition to the values that you've set here on the pathing. So it's like an offset. It's in addition to what you have in the path. There is an option here, and quite frankly, we can't. You can click continue. there is something called close, which if I go down and click close, we're not finding how that really works. It doesn't look like it actually comes back to this position. What we've found was, can I do this now? I might have to, I'm gonna have to clear it, draw again, click, click, click. This is where we're gonna have to count on you to experiment. We found best if you just click on that last one and put that last dot there, and you can move it up and right on it. And okay, well, close enough. There you go. All right, something like that. Anyway, get it. So the close does it closes the pattern, but it doesn't seem like the moving head truly goes to the beginning of it again. So try it with yours and see if it works. Um, that's what we're finding for us so far. I'm going to click on that guy, click on this guy and delete it. Bring it back down. I'm going to bring it down here and bring this guy down here. Scale is just as it says. If you add a little bit, it means it's going to make a little more exaggerated up, a little more exaggerated down. So we understand that. And I'm just going to double check. Again, always check to make sure you've got the moving head selected. Okay, going to go pathing. And time offset. So that means each one of these will start it slightly later. So it'll move the effects slightly in a staggered. See how it's sort of like rippling through the moving heads? So you can play with that. Now remember when I first talked about this, this is coming down towards the audience. So this is your tilt, and this is your pan, obviously, to the left and right. If we said ignore the tilt, we should find that the heads are just going to stay in the same spot, tilting wise, and they're just going to go back and forth. All right, so it's basically changing it to this effect here. It's ignoring the tilt. And then likewise, you could say ignore pan, which of course it won't do anything. It's just going to stay put. Ignore the tilt, and you should see that it's going to ignore the tilt, but it's going to do the pan. So it's going to spin back and forth. Or sorry, the other way around. We're ignoring the pan, so it's not going to move. It's just going to go up and down. So those are those two things there. That's pretty self-evident. Okay. Another thing, let's go back here, turn that off. And we have, let's go the scale of 0. Now this is where you'd want to have the preset, the pre-effect. I'll call it pre-effect. So it's lined up in the position before the lights come on, or I can just cheat and put a little bit in there. Anyway, so back to this effect and make sure the buttons are selected for me. There is a save preset. It's going to save this configuration. I click save and test 1. And we found that you usually have to click off and back on. Well, okay, let's go to the bars effect and then come back to this one. Okay, it's supposed to show up down below here, and I'm not sure what triggers it to show up. So presets are there, still a little bit of a work in progress, in my opinion. They come in there. I'm going to try going to the position tab, click all, and I'm going to try this save preset, see if that makes a difference. Position. Okay, that's what I'm expecting. Notice it's hiding in the background here. We'll hopefully get that addressed soon. But now you can see that it did create the preset. It's up there. It's hiding in the background. Let's go over here, click the bars effect, come down here, and now that it's redrawn the panel, you can see that it shows up there, right? So there's the preset that we just saved. Showing really doesn't show you much in this thing because you can't really show a tilt in this setting. But let's go and see if we reset the defaults. Go back to position. I'm going to say, and I think I'm just going to be able to say presets, and it's back to where it's working. Now I have a bug issued. Okay, that looks like it's working. It shows the settings there if we hit the reset, and that can pull in your presets. Okay, So still a work in progress. If you find any issues or something that's not working for you, let us know. I'm going to touch quickly on the dimmer just because it's there. Uh, and so I'm going to move this dimmer out of here. I'm going to move that one out of here. We have just the moving head effect. I'm going to say all position. And okay, so they're in position, but you don't see anything lit up, of course. If I just say on, and yeah, it should have turned them on. Maybe it didn't. This is why I'm using this other thing here. Let me re-render and see if that brings it on. No. See, this is what's got me here. So I don't mean to highlight issues and bugs here, but it certainly looks like a bug to me. Uh, Pan, tilt, we've got that. Dimmer, turn it on, nothing. If I move this over back here, we got our dimmer. So maybe that's a configuration back here on the layout. I know it's sort of a cat and mouse here in terms of what you need to set in terms of dimmer channel here versus a dimmer channel here. Maybe this is it here. I probably want an 8 here to turn on my dimmer, but then it breaks the other one. So cat and mouse, which one you want to use. So I'll just highlight that as what it is. It is what it is. We're still working on that progress. So for now, I'm going to stick away from this. You get a lot more flexibility with this effect. You can tweak it a lot easier. So click on all. Similarly for the color wheel, I showed you how to add colors with various effects, but you can also use the color wheel, or colors if you're setting up an RGB. I'm going to try and say it is a green. There we go. We have green. I just clicked my left mouse, and I'm going to say it's going to go from green to blue. And oops, I got one for green. I hold the shift key and I get a second color. So you're going to see it switches from green to blue. There's also an option here for auto shutter. And what that means is as it's changing from green to blue, it's going to stop the shutter for this many milliseconds here. So again, if you got a color wheel, you don't want to see the spinning disc as it's changing colors. You can set the auto shutter. And ideally, you can see the difference. It's slightly different colors for the color wheel, so you know it's getting a different value. I am not sure that I'm getting a shutter turned off and on here. It could be because I have this effect. So let's assume that's what it is. Dimmer, I don't see a shutter on. Again, it's not how I'm going to suggest you use that effect. I would think you just leave the color wheel alone and put it on with this. It's just a lot easier to do. Likewise, you can do it setting it to the beats. You can change it as well, so that might be easier anyway. And what was I doing? So I had this guy, set it to all, go to color wheel. Another thing here, so I had the shift key to add multiple colors. If you want to get rid of one, you click on it once, hit the delete key, click on that one, delete it, click on this one, delete it. So that's how you can remove color choices there. Yeah, but I'm just going to remove it right out of there because I'm not a fan of that. Go to my shutter again, make sure I turn it on, and click on this guy. And I got my green and blue moving heads with the color wash. So just to recap, you can do so much with just the positioning, the pan, the tilt, the fan, pan, fan, tilt. Use your groupings. You can obviously do cycles, which makes to do that effect multiple times. Be sure and choose your fixtures. You can do evens or odds, or you can even go 1, 2, 3, 4. If you want to do left side versus right side, any combination will work fine. Look at creating a dimmers where you can control the light coming on and off. You probably always need your shutter turned on, so look at that. You have a pre-effect that you might put in front of this effect so that your moving heads are in place prior to the light coming on. So you want to look at doing that. Make sure when you're dealing with your moving head effect that it is per model default. Same with the colors that you place up there. Make sure it's per model default. And the orders, of course, is important. Use this trick of expanding out your list and your moving heads so that you can get a sense of things that are being placed on the various um, channels. Oh, while I mention that, let's go back and look at the layout. Maybe you're wondering where that came from. So on my moving head, and I scroll down to strand node names, click on this, and there you go. So my channel one is pan, pan fine, tilt, tilt fine, color wheel, global select, shutter, dimmer, etc., etc. I don't think this works anymore because that was with the old moving head. That's probably got to be refixed. So I'm not gonna suggest doing that. Just go ahead and put it in there manually. And that way, when you expand out the prop here in the strand one, you get the names corresponding it to you to give you an idea of, why is it not showing up? Well, I got a dimmer, I can tell, I got a shutter. Yep, I can see I have a color wheel. In my case, I need a gobo of value of 16 because otherwise it shows like a flowery pattern. It's just a cheap DJ light, so so I would need a value of 16 across the board here. There's probably a fancy way of doing this, but I'm just going to put in 16 for each of my moving heads. And similarly, I had my gobos, I just put in strand names. I put MH1 through 8 in there just so it's really obvious. And so when I do output the lights, I'm going to get a solid circle gobo, and it's going to light up red, green, blue, and it's going to move into positions. That's it. That is moving head advanced effect. What we've learned so far. Stay tuned for more updates and changes and fixes and such, but this should at least get you started with how to use it, and maybe drop in a few on yours. You can get so much with just a few clicks. It literally is uh, one moving head effect there, a home position, and turning on the dimmers and the shutter, and you've got something as simple as left or right, up and down, fanning, tilting. You can do so much. Anyway, if you enjoyed it, thank you. Leave your comments and likes and down below, and see you in the Zoom room if you have questions with it. All right. Have a great day.